Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to a Shenmue Dojo video. Today's video, I'm going to be looking at the Shenmue 4 story and what I want from it. Now, you guys may remember a video I did probably about 6 to 9 months ago where I sort of talked about Shenmue 4 in general and what I wanted from it. This one is very much focused in on the story itself and the things I'd love for it to cover. Hopefully it does cover. It could be a long one, folks, so just prepare yourselves. It might be a good 20-25 minute video, but we'll see how we go. So I'm going to break it down into some themes here. Talk about Ryo's training, Shenhua's powers, the mirrors, did Iwao do it, the Chi Men, Ziming, a little bit on continuity because I think that's very important, and I'm very briefly going to touch on Shenmue 5 as well. So let's dive straight into the story elements of Shenmue 4 and what I think this thing should and would love to cover. Ryo, let's talk about Ryo and his training and his development. All through Shenmue, from Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2, Shenmue 3. It has all been about his training, his journey, and his development as a young person growing into a young man. Obviously, he's lost his father, as we know. The centre of this, and this comes into the chapter titles a little bit, is there's going to be more training to come. If you look at chapter card, I think 8 by memory, I'll chuck it on the screen so you can see it now for everybody. You can see that there's going to be more training where you see him in the green training gear going into the Akira gear. Obviously, it's back in the day when he was still Akira with the 4 Grandmasters, which was confirmed through a Shenmue Master interview about 10 years ago now, that obviously still train him. The other element of Ryo, what I really want to see, is how does his desire for revenge dissipate? What causes it? Yu Suzuki has talked about for years that Ryo's lust for vengeance will eventually go away. Now, will that be because of his father's words, keep those you love close to you, that actually he starts fighting for the people around him? There might be a situation where they're all in danger and he has to go in and fight for them to ensure their safety. Or could there be an event that changes his outlook on vengeance? Do his actions potentially cause a death of a friend? I've been saying for years, I think Ren could be the one to die. There is a chapter card, I think it's chapter card 10, where he's holding a body. That could well be Ren. So there's going to be something happen to Ryo, potentially in Shenmue 4, where this lust for vengeance disappears. And we started to see snippets of that in Shenmue 2. With the scene where he's practicing Tai Chi on the cliff, where he was finally able to clear his mind and defeat Dol Neo, but he's almost regressed a little bit in Shenmue 3, that he's very headstrong, diving into situations that he probably should have thought about a bit more. And then obviously when he fought Landy, he was inflicted with rage. Right, yeah, I can understand why, but he then all those lessons that he'd been taught, the lack of kung fu, the clear the mind like the polished mirror, he'd forgotten. So then it comes into the next point with Landy. Are we going to defeat Landy in Shenmue 4? Or is there going to be something much larger at play that Ryo has to focus on ahead of Landy or above Landy? We'll see. It's a broad spectrum for Ryo. There's a lot of character development left for him. And I think, judging by the chapter cards, at least he will get there. But it's how he gets there I'm really, really interested in. Moving away from Ryo, we then come on to the next main character, is Shenhua and her powers. Now, quite honestly, there still remains a massive amount of mystery around her powers. If you look at the Shenmue Online stuff, it's very much intimated that her powers are there. She turns into the Phoenix and battles the dragon in the sky with the clouds over the city. Now, that has been said. It isn't canon by Yu Suzuki. This was about, 10 years ago through a Shenmue Master interview. Check those out. We're covering them in the podcast at the moment, so go and check those out. But I'm not as convinced by that, if I'm brutally honest. So there's a massive amount of unknown around her powers. Look at the Shenmue 2 ending. She pushes the sword in, essentially using ki energy. So almost like the Force, I guess. She comes down like that. She doesn't touch it. The Project Berkeley video is probably the biggest sort of giveaway, that she shoved these guys off and then basically gets a ball of energy in this cliff temple. I'm guessing it's the cliff temple that seems to be in Shenmue 3, hopefully where Shenmue 4 will start, explodes, Landy looks shocked, etc. The Shenmue 3 mind tricks are another one, obviously with Yang Lang when she's interrogating him, she absolutely, I don't know what she does to him, but she does something to him, and he's more than willing to be talking after that. And there's also the baby flashback in Shenmue 2 where you see I'm guessing her parents, but it could be one of her ancestors, for example, which is a point I'm going to come to in a second, that you have that flashback, and she's very much linked to that as well. Now, this, again, with her powers, has the link to her ancestors. It's been said quite openly in the games that she feels that she can feel her ancestors. There's a line in Shenmue 3 where she talks about having or feeling like she's had 100 birthdays and that she can feel the people around her. She talks about Luang, who's one of the big cities that we may end up visiting, that she can feel the hustle and bustle and it feels familiar to her. Even in interviews, Yu Suzuki has talked about that she has this inherent link to her ancestors, that she can feel them, feel their past and link to them. So how's that going to play out potentially in the Cliff Temple and potentially in terms of the lore, the mystery going forward? Other question is how are her and Ryo linked? Obviously, they talk about this prophecy, but how is that going to play out for her and Ryo and their relationship, and where's that going to go? And as I said, are her powers finally going to come to the fore at the Cliff Temple, which, judging by the Project Berkeley footage, it seems likely, but Shenmue 3 felt a bit more grounded and had less of that mysticism and magic that Shenmue 2 did at the end, for example. So that may well have changed as things gone on. I'd like an answer to that one way or the other, and I'd like it to be closer to the Project Berkeley stuff, if at all possible. Then we come on to the mystery of the mirrors. Shenmue 4 looks to be starting at the Cliff Temple. It's very much talked about quite a lot in Shenmue 3. It's on the scroll that Elder Ye gives you. And obviously the ending of Shenmue 3 is Ryo, Ren and Shenhua walking towards the Cliff Temple. And that is also shown very, very much in chapter card 7, which will be on the screen for you right now, where you can see Ryo fighting on it looks like a Shaolin monk on a Cliff Temple of some description, and then you've got Landy and Niao-san and somebody who looks like Ziming sort of faded into the background of that as well. So we know that's important. What we do know about the mirrors is they were commissioned in 1910. We know they're made of Phantom River stone, and they are the key to the treasure in this Cliff Temple. But we don't really know what's going to happen when those two mirrors are actually combined. When you listen to Master Chen in Shenmue 1, he talks about the mirrors being combined to resurrect the legendary monster Chi-Yu, which will devour the earth. Yuandazu talks about it unveiling the location of the treasure of the Qing Dynasty. Could it be both? Who knows? The Project Berkeley video shows a tiny section of when they're combined, you have that statue head opening up and there's some sort of magic around it. So there's a hint there that it's more than treasure, and it might well be leaning further towards Chi-Yu than actual physical treasure. As I said, it could well be both, but again, we'll have to see when we hit the Cliff Temple and in Shenmue 4 when we get there. The next one is a really important question. Is did Iwao actually kill Ziming Zhao? Now, I've covered Iwao in a character perspective video fairly recently, so I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail on this because I think the more the detail is in that video. But this is a major question here. Did he actually do it? And the question I raise is, what if he actually did? What were the circumstances that facilitated him having to kill his best friend? It's also likely, or potentially at least, that Landy would have crossed paths with Iwao when he was younger. His father was best friends with him, so it makes sense that they would have crossed paths, potentially when him and his father were training together. They may have met Iwao, trained, and had that link because of Iwao's reaction in the dojo that day, where he goes, "It can't be you." So he clearly recognises who Landy is. And there's this, like I said, there's this comment in the anime where Landy says to Ryo, albeit in a dream sequence, "What do you really know about your father's past?" Now that is massive for me. That's putting in the seed of doubt in a lot of people's mind, including Ryo's mind in the anime, that maybe, just maybe, his father wasn't quite all he thought he was. But then, how does Ryo react to this if he actually did do it? Because then he's got to come to terms with not only the grief of losing somebody close to him and his only living relative, but he's then also got to come to terms with the fact that he may not have been all he thought. Now, obviously, he may then come to understand the circumstances around this and potentially forgive that. But does this change Ryo's focus in terms of how he drives himself forward? And it's almost sort of give him the point of going, well, I don't want to go down that same path. I can't go down this same path. And it changes his focus. The other question here is, will we go to Menkun? It's talked about early on in the first Shenmue game, in the opening cutscenes. I'd be surprised if we didn't go there, but who knows with the changes to the story over the years. So then coming away from Iwao is the Chi-Men and the infighting and the further leaders of the Chi-Men. Now, my personal opinion is Shenmue 4 really needs to hone in on the Chi-Men, the infighting, the inner workings, and then sort of intertwine the other things that I'm talking about here with it around that sort of key story element about their drive for the mirrors, the treasure, whatever it is their motivation is. Coming back away a little bit from the general Chi-Men, I want to talk about Niao-san. We know she's tried to kill Lan Di and take over the Chi-Men. So I'd like to see what those motivations are. I'd like to see the inner work of the organisation, how that reacts to it. What is Lan Di going to do about it as well? And I really, like I said, think the game should be centred around this potential civil war, essentially. The other question I've got here is, are we going to see the other two leaders? Now, one of them is mentioned in the newspaper, again, Ty, if my memory serves me correctly, in Chai's room in Shenmue 3. Now, you can't actually see it without doing a wall break, walking in and having a look. There is, I think, a description on the Dojo forums if you want to go and see it, and it talks about this other leader. So it intimates that we are certainly going to see one more, potentially, maybe two. Depends on where the story's gone, the changes that they've made over the years, potentially. And then the other question here is, what about Tente? This person's been mentioned for in excess of 15 years now. We go back to the Shenmue Master interviews. We go back even further than that. This Tente, who is the overseeing boss of the Chi-Men, so Lan Di, Niao-san, whoever else is under him, he runs the ship, essentially. He is the big boss. Are we going to see him? Is he going to reveal himself? And the other question I've got here is, what about Yuanda Zhu? It's been talked about in several interviews with Yuanda Zhu that he is potentially not all that he seems, that there's potentially that he lies, and that actually there could be more mystery around that character than we've been let on. So how does that link into the Chi-Men? They were after him. They had a reason to be after him. We don't really know why, other than that they hate him. Why do they hate him? What's the issue there? What are Yuanda Zhu's motivations, given that he helped Iwao get the mirrors back to Japan? What are his motivations here? How does he play into all of this? And also bear in mind that Zhang, one of his associates, was found in Niao, keeps getting captured because he's useless. So is he trying to keep tabs on Ryo from a distance? That's something I'd like to see play out. Then, sort of attached to the Chi-Men, but it's deserving of its own little segment, I guess, is Ziming. That he finally shows up. 3 games in, we haven't seen him. Now, Ziming, as we know, has been teased since Shenmue 2 with the comics off the Xbox version, for example. And you can see that he's holding his pendant, thinking about his sister. And within that, he is working under Niao-san. That's very much confirmed that he isn't a leader, but he certainly seems to be fairly high-ranking the Chi-Men, but a high-ranking underling under Niao-san. So what is his role in this game going to be, or the future of the story going to be? Will he escape the path of vengeance that he's on? Bearing in mind we know he left his sister Zhuing to go and chase down the Chi-Men who killed their family, killed their mother and father. Will he train Ryo, potentially, as part of his redemption arc? Will we see Zhuing again? I think probably we will. I think she will show up again. She is in one of the final chapter cards as well. So it is likely we'll see her again. Just, I don't know quite how they will introduce Ziming to Zhuing again, or whether Ryo plays an intermediary role in that, bearing in mind he now has the pendant. One theory I have is actually Ziming could form 2 of the Grandmasters in the chapter card that I've shown previously, that give Ryo his final training before coming to the end of the story and the big whatever ending is planned, that they help Ryo finally discover that calm, discover that peace, discover that presence of mind that he needs to take on whatever bigger goal that is at play here. So that's like the broad story that I would like this thing to cover. I want to bring up now a point on continuity, and I don't want this to sound disrespectful or anything to Wisenet and the people who've worked on Shenmue 3, because it's definitely not aimed that way, but it is still a very important point, and I think the community would agree with this. We all saw There was some jarring continuity issues in Shenmue 3. It's there. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. Now, this is likely due to the change in writers, bearing in mind that none of the original writers actually really worked on Shenmue 3, certainly by the credits at the end of it. There was some input early with the Kickstarter, but it doesn't seem they had as much involvement as I think we'd all anticipated. So that is going to be an issue with continuity, that previous writers may not have the background and things that we did and the previous writers had. Also bearing in mind that they were probably working within very tight constraints at the time. So this is where I think we really need somebody within that team that's making Shenmue 4. There's plenty of people out in the community who could absolutely do it. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to forget somebody. But there's plenty of people out there, not me, who could go out there and really act as a continuity expert for Shenmue 4 or a Shenmue 5 if it went that way. So that would be the link between the community and potentially Wisenet, but also be a sense check in terms of understanding the lore, understanding the history, understanding the characters, and just making sure that those continuity issues from 3 sort of don't happen again in a Shenmue 4, that we can pull back to the themes and the things that were established in the previous games, but make it make sense going forward, and that the questions I've covered are hopefully answered in as best a way as possible. As I said, it's not supposed to be disrespectful in any way, shape or form. I can understand where the issues came from. I just think it would be a really good role for somebody or a group from the community or whoever, just to establish that there's that continuity all the way through the game, so that is at least established and held in the way I hope it, we wanted it to be for Shenmue 3, which unfortunately wasn't quite there where we wanted it. So then, coming away from that is my final point. This comes on to Shenmue 5. Now, in this video, I've covered 7 sections here of story that I would like Shenmue 4 to cover. So this brings up a valid question that I've talked about many times. I'm going to bring it up briefly again here, is whether a 5th game would be a better idea. Now, I completely appreciate that the market conditions may not allow for something like that. Therefore, there might have to be compromises with the Shenmue 4 story if it was going to finish it. In all likelihood, at the moment, unless somebody comes in with a massive pot of cash, that's probably the way it's going to go. So it's really hard here. I'd love it for Shenmue 5 because I think then you could develop all of these points between the 2 games really, really fully, really thoroughly, and tell an amazing story that I think we'd all want, and I certainly want Shenmue 4 and 5. But in reality, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get there, and I think Shenmue 4 will be the end of everything unless somebody comes in with a pot of money or Sega decides, you know what, we're really go in on this potentially. So that's unfortunately the realistic view around this. We just have to see how this thing plays out. So guys, what do you want Shenmue 4's story to cover? Have you got any ideas that I haven't listed? How do you want this thing to play out going forward? And I've said, do you want it to finish it? I think we probably, there's certainly a camp there that do want Shenmue 4 to finish it. How could it finish it? What characters do you want to come back? What themes do you want Shenmue 4 to cover when we get there? So guys, the last little thing I want to do is give a shout out to the members. I say this in every video, probably bored of hearing it from me now, but I do it because I'm nice and it's something that we obviously promised our members. I give everybody a shout out. As I say, every video, a couple quid a month. You get early access to all the videos outside of the podcasts. We like to keep those as premieres for the atmosphere, etc. there. All the money that is raised goes to the running of the website, competitions that we get prizes in for, etc. etc. But for those of you who have signed up for a membership, and I will just say, actually, there's another point before I go through the list, that none of the content is locked behind a paywall either. So if you don't sign up, it doesn't matter. You just get everything on release day rather than ahead of time. So guys, those of you members, thank you very much. So going through the list: KNK, Renners, Richard Cartledge, that's me, Carl, Terry, Stuart Peacock, Mark the Pulverizer, Little Crypty Monster, Titch, Richard King, Sean Potter, Guppy Coy, Bruce Wayne 937, Survival Spears, Peter Hoffland, Sean Don, Wandering Through Shenmue, Phantom Riverstone, Bruce Wayne 911, Mike Franz, Manny Figueroa, Master Mo, Nick Hughes, Sean Hastings, Clunky Mage, and William Lovering. Thank you for being members and helping with the website costs for James and I. It's very much appreciated. And thank you everybody for dropping in on this particularly long video. Again, these these videos are taking a longer theme so far this year. I think it's just the way they're going. Thank you for dropping on all the content. Thank you for engaging with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. You know exactly where you can find us. We're pretty much Shenmue Dojo everywhere these days. Drop us a like, share, subscribe on all the relevant channels. And I will be back with a video in the not too distant future. But for now, guys, take care and have a good one.